segue to this conversation is we have a gap in how we see the world and how people have access to all kinds of resources. And part of the gap is the remnant of what we call Jim Crow America. Jim Crow America did not just stop by Charles Houston's landmark cases in housing, education, transportation. It did not stop right there. Tentacles of Jim Crow America exist to this very day and will affect us for generations. The question posed is, what are those policies and how does that stuff work? Tonight we are excited and delighted to have with us Dr. Soji Akomolafe.
Almost there.
Akomolafe. Tablet went out for a second. Akomolafe is here with us. He serves as the chair of the Department of Political Science at the Norfolk State University in Norfolk, Virginia. He has studied around the world. He has studied in Nigeria as well as in France with his doctorate coming from the University of Bordeaux in Bordeaux, France. His research interest heavily has been in the area of the intersection, essentially of race, power, and politics, and how in policy, and how they all come together, and how people negotiate those worlds. He has served on the faculty of the University of Ife in Nigeria. He has served on the faculty of Lemoyne Owen College in Memphis, Tennessee, and presently serves on the faculty of Norfolk State University as the chair of the Department of Political Science. We are welcoming and glad to have with us today Dr. Soji Akomolafe. Welcome.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me? I'm one of those guys who happens to be technologically challenged. So, some of you saw me when I came in with a tie. Don't be fooled. I'm not as smart as I look. I only pretend. But guess what? It works all the time. It's as good as the real thing. If you cannot hear me, let me know. I will try and scream as much as possible. My wife tells me I do it all the time anyway. Let me start by saying that I have done so many presentations in my professional life. And that's not a bragging right. I say that to make a point that this is going to be by far one of the most important presentations that I would do. And when I tell you that I'm deeply honored to be here, please, I want you to believe it. Because I feel so proud to be here with you today because of what you try to do. I get emotional very easily. I'm the kind of guy who cries when I watch a movie. Amen. So things like this get into me very easily. But we'll come back to that later. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I hail from Nigeria. In this day of Google Map, Google is everywhere, right? But my village is so small, Google has not even discovered it yet. I grew up in a large family. I was raised in the church. And I would like to consider myself a family-oriented man. I studied in Nigeria and then later went to France where I did my doctorate. And it was from France that I transitioned to the United States. I came into this country in 1991. And as you were told a couple of minutes minutes earlier, I was in Memphis, Tennessee, and finally moved to Norfolk, Virginia in 2003. I have a beautiful wife, 2 children, one that we just adopted a few months ago, adorable 3-year-olds. And that is my story, and I'm sticking by it. Miss Spanish, please. I figured out when Laurie talked to me, I figured out the kind of audience I was going to have today. I wish I had made that a little bit, yes, a little bit larger, but I figured out the kind of audience that I was going to talk to tonight. Actually, before I go on, a disclaimer. I am not here representing Norfolk State University today because some of the things that I'm going to say, if not all the things that I'm going to be saying tonight, those are my words. They're going to be my words. I'm not here officially to represent either the Center for African American Public Policy or even the Department of Political Science. I have to put that disclaimer out there. Okay? The second thing I want to say is, and I'm probably preaching to the choir because everybody here would be able to relate to what I'm about to say. Isn't it funny how we, as human beings, we talk about history so much, but then we don't seem to learn anything from history? We study it, we talk about it, we argue about it, we fight about it, and yet we keep making the same mistakes. Things that we learned centuries ago, 1,000 years ago, and we're still repeating the same thing. Example, racism. Racism has existed since when? The beginning of time. Forever. Do you know how many books have been written on racism? From Ivy League schools to whatever kind of institutions. And you would think by now we would have known everything we needed to know about racism, right? We don't learn from history. We don't. The other thing I want to say before I even start is that, and Kathleen can relate to this, because I say that every time I talk about race. Race, or race relations, or racism, is usually a very, very uncomfortable subject. If somebody is standing in front of you and they're talking about race and all of you are shaking your head like, I agree, it's either he's lying to you or definitely he's doing something wrong. So I'm going to say some things today that will make some of you uncomfortable. And when I say uncomfortable, not because you're bad people. No. Not at all. But simply because those things are uncomfortable to hear, whether you're black, white, or whatever color. I just want to throw that out there. Next slide, man. Like I said, I don't want to go too much into history. It's like you saw a little bit of what I was going to talk about, sir, because what I want to do is I want to bring the past to the present to see if it is possible that we have learned anything about what we know regarding the past? And if not, then why not? Why not? But then before we can do that, we just need a little refresher. Let's just remind ourselves how we got here. Yeah, the Civil War. We fought the Civil War. And you know, the conqueror always gets to take the gains of time. And then sometimes he will tell the story. Okay? So that war was fought and won. Lost by the South. And then what did we get from it? We got probably one of the most important 3 amendments in history of the United States. The 13th Amendment. I don't want to come here and tell you about how odious slavery is. Some of you lived the experience. Because some of you were old enough to have folks who were a direct part of that experience. There's no argument about that. We all know that's probably the worst thing that has ever happened in human history. Thank goodness we got the 14th Amendment. I know, yes, it's on paper, it's technical. 1865, symbolically, it was abolished. And I said symbolically because for those people who were around then, they knew that was just the beginning of the end. And we're still not there yet. But at least it was a milestone. You know, everybody talks about the 13th Amendment. You know, the one that I really like most about all those 3 amendments is the 14th. It's the 14th. To me, it's even more important than the abolition of slavery. You want to know why? I'll tell you why. Before then, not only blacks were not citizens, because they did not have equal protection under the law, that means they were subhuman. Let me say that again. That means in everything that they had to go through, they were reminded every day that they were less than human. At least again in theory, the 14th Amendment was supposed to correct that. And this is the one that I call the greatest hoax of all. We're not even going to talk about that. Because as I tell my students, that's not even on, you know, some things you say, okay, yeah, at least on paper, even on paper, this doesn't look good. It does not look good. You want me to tell you why? Because it would have been better for the people who lived that period of time if the 15th Amendment were not enacted. Because it was the enactment of this that actually caused people to be lynched, people to disappear, to do all kinds of things that you can imagine. This was the cause of misery more than any other law that has been enacted under the Constitution of the United States, period. Next slide, man. You know, the funny thing, before I leave the Reconstruction era, the funny thing about it is this. Hope is a beautiful thing. Here we are, in a church setting. And we're all people of faith, no matter what your denomination is. And one of the cornerstones of our faith is hope. Hope is you believe in something, you don't even necessarily have to see it. Hope is what nurtures our faith. That was why the Reconstruction era was such a travesty of justice, because it gave people hope, much of which was never delivered. Let me say that again. People were jubilant. People thought that, oh my gosh, finally, here is the end to the suffering. A suffering that before then looked like there was no end to it, and all of a sudden some folks gathered together and say, well, you know what, we're going to abolish slavery today. And then a few years later, everybody is going to have the same protection under the law. And as soon as those hopes were raised, they began to crash, one by one by one by one by one. Here's something that I want us to consider. The Reconstruction era came and it was gone. The white Democrats, during that presidential election that we know, okay, you know what? You rub my back, I rub your back. You let us be. Now I'm talking about the Federalists, just close your eyes to whatever. You want to be president, we give you the presidency, but you don't care about the presidency. Where are you again? You're in Washington, D.C. How many miles away is that from us? Oh, you can keep your presidency. Just leave us. Let us be. Let us do. And some people closed their eyes. They knew what was going to happen when those federal troops were withdrawn, because they knew why those troops were there in the first instance. So to agree to withdraw them and to tell us that they don't know what was going to follow, that also is a hoax. I'm going to tie some of these things together. I'm coming there. I'm coming there. Vote. Vote, vote, vote. That's how you start it. How many people tonight alone have talked about the importance of voting? Did I not say we don't learn anything from history? Look at what I have over there. Since the 1870s, some people already understood the power of that vote. They do. We had terrorist organizations. Those are not my words. That's what the history book said. They're not. People who were terrorizing folks. The red shirts, the White League, literally killed folks to prevent them from voting. What about voter suppression? Oh, we're talking about that now, aren't we? Oh, they were talking about it then. Surprise, surprise. Funny how history repeats itself. You know, yeah, we know Jim Crow laws established, institutionalized segregation, racism. Yes, we know about the fountains that were separated. We know about the buses, transportation. We know about all those things. That is the legacy of Jim Crow. Jim Crow, if you see, the title of my presentation is the manual of how to institutionalize racism. That is racism personified. But how did we get there? I want to single out Woodrow Wilson. You see, I'm a student of political science, okay? And especially if there's anybody here who is in international relations, you will know Woodrow Wilson is one of the most respected politicians, if not human beings, around the world. You see what he did? You see what he did? Again, how come we don't learn from history? You see what is happening today? You see what happened then? You know why you're here, each and every one of you? It's because you're concerned. Why should you be concerned about something that we already knew over a century ago? Because we're still here and we're still dealing with the same. Why should that be? Yes, ma'am. You know, some people tried, and I want to digress a little bit before I go into this. By the way, let us be frank about it. Let us be clear about this. Good people come in all shapes and sizes, genders, and races. And so do bad people. The good white people, the bad white people. The good black people, the bad black people. The good brown people. And I can go on and on and on. There were folks, as tumultuous as those days, those years were, there were folks who stood up because they believed, who stood up that in spite of the difficulties, they wanted to hope. They held to that hope. Some of them died for it. I'm not talking about black people, I'm talking about white people. Some of them were ostracized by their family. going to say something. And some of you may have heard me say this. When you talk about racism, the poster child for racism is Adolf Hitler. People will tell you Adolf Hitler killed 6 million Jews. Not because they did anything wrong, because they were Jews. That was all the excuse, the reason that he needed. Adolf Hitler was evil. There's no doubt about that. Many of you may not have heard, as a guy, thank goodness he's dead now, he's been dead for some time, Idi Amin. Idi Amin used to be the president of Uganda. Idi Amin killed hundreds, thousands of his people. There is a country in Central Africa, it's called the Congo. Mobutu Sese Seko, who used to be the president of that country, was one of the greatest allies of the United States of America when he was alive. Patrice Lumumba, who would have made, by everybody's acclamation, a very good president, was assassinated with the complicity of the CIA. Congo today, listen to this now, over 6 million Africans have been killed and are being killed. As I'm talking to you tonight, people are dying because they've been fighting each other for, I can't even remember. I say that to make a point. Now remember, when we talk about race, race is supposed to be an uncomfortable thing. Because when I was coming here, I said I would try in as much as possible to remind you of why you are here. I don't know any of you, maybe one, and I'm meeting you for the first time. Let me use the language of my students. I have no reason to suck up to you. Okay, so you gave me some shrimp. Okay, maybe. But the reason why that is important to point out is this. And that's where I'm going with the next slide. Okay? Again, I don't want us to dote too much on what Jim Crow did to this nation, did to the soul of this nation, did to black people. That's history. That's going to be etched in history forever and ever. It cannot be denied, no matter how much revisionists try to do that. Plessy versus Ferguson. We talk about that all the time. Yes, that did not succeed. Yes, Mr. Plessy was denied his rights by the Supreme Court, with all the humiliation that accompanied it. But what you did not know also was that actually Plessy versus Ferguson was orchestrated right from the beginning. It was orchestrated by a group of concerned people like you, white and black, mostly white, who actually were so uncomfortable with the plight of blacks and wanted to do something about it. And they handpicked Plessy. What if they had won that case? Of course, it was going to be won 58 years later. Hi, Thurgood Marshall, bless your heart. So now we come into the present. And I want to bring all this together because this is the one that I'm interested in, because this is why you're here. Let's see if it is possible to learn something from history. I'm not hopeful, but I try. Hey, those of us teachers, that's what they pay us to do. Try the impossible. We live in a democracy, right? I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Because what I want to do is put Jim Crow within the context of American democracy. And let's see where we go from there. Politics. That's why so many of you understand the importance of voting. For those of us who are political scientists, the simplest definition of politics is that who gets what, when, where, and how. If I may say something, because when we hear politics, those of us, especially if you're not familiar with that discipline, would think of, yeah, the American government, yeah, local government, state politics, international politics. It's all that. But actually, there's politics everywhere, in everything that we do, within the family, within the church. If you are a father, if you are a mother and you have 2 kids, and you kind of like one better than the other, if you got 3 kids and one is trying to snitch on the other so that he or she can gain your favor, what is that? Politics. If one got a Honda Civic and the other one is like, but I get straight A's, I think I should get a Honda Accord. What is that? Politics. And there's only one thing that ties all those things together. Power. That was what Jim Crow was all about. Some people were afraid they were going to lose that power. I wish they had thought about a better way. But at that time, for whatever reason, the only way they thought they could retain that power was to resort into institutionalizing a legacy of racism, a legacy of segregation. Let's talk about power a little bit. And I have a huge respect for all of you, but I'm just going to pretend for 2 seconds that you're my students. Because this is what I tell them at the beginning of class. I teach a class in American government. And I tell them, because I want you to understand what power is all about. Because power in itself could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. If I come in here, instead of my tie, I have a hood and stuff like that, and I have a gun. I said, everybody give me your money and stuff like that. I got a whole bunch of chains and earrings and money and wallets and stuff like that. No, the cops are going to catch up with me maybe before I, drive 10 miles down the road. And I probably will be sleeping in the gym in a cell time. If, on the other hand, I come back the next day and I'm still the same man, but I have a badge, I don't even have to have the gun, but I have a badge that says Deputy Sheriff. And I say, excuse me, ma'am, I followed you here because you were doing 70 on a 35. And I move right next to this beautiful lady and I say, oh my God, you've been drinking. And I can impound that car. I took your property away the first time, I went to jail. I'm taking her property away the second time, I get a promotion for that. And the first time, the power that I exercised is not a legitimate form of power. The second time, the badge that I have, I don't even have to have a gun. They don't carry guns in Britain, UK. Cops, they carry what you call that stuff, baton. That's all. But that badge gives me the legitimacy to take away her car. Power plus legitimacy, mathematical equation, it's equal to authority. The first time I didn't have the authority to do what I did, that's why I went to jail. The second time I had the authority to do it, that's why I get a raise. But that's that got to do. Because when you are in politics, when people see that you exercise, or when they see the power that you are exercising as legitimate, you get their cooperation. If you want them to pay taxes, they will pay the taxes. If you put people in jail and they know that the due process has been followed, they have no problem with that. But if you exercise power, whether you're the government or you're not, the way Jim Crow was exercised, it's seen as what? An illegitimate form of power. It doesn't matter whether you write it into the Constitution or not. Perception. Because legitimacy sometimes is an issue of perception. That is one lesson that we should have learned from Jim Crow. And because of what we're seeing happening today, apparently we did not. It didn't happen within a vacuum. That's why I want to wrap this whole thing around democracy. We are, as human beings, we sometimes say things, maybe because we've heard them said so many times, and then we just believe them to be gospel truth. Or maybe we just didn't even sit down to think about them. Or maybe somebody that we respect so much, that we look so highly up to, could be father, it could be mother, it could be pastor, it could be professor. And you hear those people say it, and then you just don't question those things. You believe them. It's a huge problem. You know why it's a huge problem? Because it takes away our power of critical thinking. And if we cannot think critically, that means we're susceptible to what others tell us. We've seen so many of that happen today, right? Because there's certain things that you say, oh my gosh, how can you believe that? Because their power of critical thinking has either been taken away or has not even been exercised at all. I'll give you an example. When we were growing up, they told us two things about democracy. Democracy is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Popular sovereignty. But then at the same time, they were telling us that we had something on the books, law, called the Constitution, and when that thing was ratified, it so happened that government excluded almost 80 to 90% of the same people. If you were black, Native American, if you were female, black or white, no. And then if you were male, white, and you don't have slaves and you don't have property, who's left? Who is left? The 1%. Oh, man, don't get me started on that 1%. Don't get me started on that 1%. So here is the thing. The second thing is our democracy is anchored on liberty. Give me liberty or what? Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing. Blacks were not free at a point when this Constitution, 1787, was being discussed. By the way, in a closed room, bunch of white folks, all very rich people. I don't know how rich you are, but there were no folks like me there. Behind closed doors, you are supposed to be coming up with a government that signifies liberty, freedom, and then you're doing it behind closed doors? Something wrong with that. And then the freedom is not only blacks. If you were female at that point in time, you actually consider the property of your husband. Yeah. You gotta have your husband's permission to what? And then freedom, if you were white and you were not property or whatever, you don't even have the freedom to run for office. You don't have the freedom to vote. So the two basic things that we were told, they were what? They were falsehoods.
No, they were lies.
They were based on lies. Here's where I'm going with all this. And some of you may disagree with what I'm about to say right now. Because, like I said, they're good people in all the colors, all the shapes, all the genders. That you are sitting here today, that you are talking about this, that you invite a village boy from somewhere 4,000 miles away, village that's not even on Google Map and stuff like that, and you're even willing to listen to my rants and stuff like that. That means something. That means that you're part of the change that is needed. It's something that keeps you awake at night. You know what? Let me tell you what I'd do if I have a magic wand. I would clone each one of you, and I will make thousands and probably millions of you, and this world will be a much better place. How about that? So, let us fast forward. Let us come to modern day America. Now remember at the beginning of my presentation, I did a disclaimer. You didn't know where I was going with that. Now you're going to understand why I'm doing a disclaimer. I'm not here as a Norfolk State professor. I'm not here as the executive director of the Center for African American Public Policy. I am here as Soji, period. Because now I'm about to tell you some things that are really, really controversial. Okay? It doesn't matter, and I do respect. That's my profession. That's what I was trained to. So I do respect, whether you're from the left or whether you're from the right. Your party affiliation is not the problem. The problem is that some people have hijacked what you believed in, and because of the way the system, again, lack of freedom, because we don't have that freedom today. You think we do, we don't. We don't. Let me give you one figure. The Congress of the United States, for you to win, whether in the House or the Senate, anybody here can run. Anybody here can win. And I'll tell you why. Because all you have to do, statistics, this is the statistics, all you have to do is raise more money. 97% of the time, the person who wins that race has raised more money. So statistically speaking, you have 97% of chance to win if you raise more money than your opponents. There could be 20 of them, there could be 200 of them. So once in a while, when somebody outraced you and that fellow lost, it becomes news. It shouldn't be news. Your vote, you take, it counts. Yeah. But I give you so many places, so many reasons why it doesn't count. Because we're pointing fingers at Jim Crow, yeah, the South, oh, the dirty South, whatever you want to call the South. It's no longer the South now, it's now the North and the South. It's now the United States of America, where the 1% tells the rest of us what to do, what we do. It's a proverb in my place, part of the world where I come from, that when you point a finger at somebody, how many are you pointing at yourself? 3. So that person might be really guilty. He's guilty of that one thing that you're accusing him of. But why? I'm guilty of but you know what? The empty barrel does what? Makes the loudest noise. If I can make more noise, oh yeah, White House. If I can make more noise, then you forget my 3 fingers pointing at me, and all of a sudden, he becomes the boogeyman. Which is what we're seeing right now. The Electoral College. What the heck does that mean? What the heck does that mean? That's modern day Jim Crow. Because you know what? The founding fathers understood the power of power. They didn't want a democracy. And please, I'm not saying they're bad people. No, they're not bad people. They're just human beings who happen not to get it. Electoral college. Why do you make us go out in the rain to vote? I don't get it. I don't get it. Because sometimes I think about these things and I'm there alone and I think, okay, I know I'm not retarded. So how come I don't get it? These are things that when we talk about Jim Crow is not that far back in your rear mirror. It's not. The name of the game might have changed. You know, there's certain things that are not as odious as, people. Let me see how best I can put this, and I'm about to finish in 2 seconds. Yeah, I do that all the time. Sorry. You know, when you, like I said, I have a 3-year-old. When she's going to bed and she's got her sleeping clothes and stuff like that, oh, you're so beautiful, whatever. And then she comes in the morning and her mama dressed and she looks like a princess. I'm like, you're beautiful. Something changed. She looked more beautiful than last night. But it's still the same girl. That's what Jim Crow looks like. Thank God we don't lynch people anymore. But have you been to the jails lately? Hello? Have you been to the jails lately?
No.
Kathleen, you had some of those stories? It is real, y'all. It is real that you have black folks who are afraid every morning the children get out to go to school. They're not exaggerating it. Now remember, I said this. No, it doesn't mean all black people are good, all black people are bad. It doesn't mean all white. But when you want to understand, I don't know whether it's possible. I say it, but I'm not even sure how much I believe it too, because I don't know whether it's possible to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. I wear boots, so you can't even get into my shoes. Because I have a 23-year-old. This is my personal experience. And I promise you I'm going to finish soon. I was just blessed by God that he's not the kind of boy that will go and will come home 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. But I tell you what, if my boy doesn't come home at 11 o'clock in the morning, because I know normally by 9, 10 o'clock he's at home, my mind is racing. I'm thinking of so many things. It's happened to me before, so I know what I'm talking about. Well, the cop asked for my ID and stuff like that, and I said, okay, so what do you do? I said I'm a professor at Norfolk State. He said, you're a professor? What kind of professor are you? And just talk to me like, I go to the store. I go to the grocery store, I go to Macy's, I go to, some of these posh offices, and because of my accent, you have and God bless, because every job is important, but you have the clerk and repeating every word that she or he thinks that because I have this accent I may not understand, and we'll repeat it twice and we speak slowly so that I can get what she's saying, and I want to say, I have a freaking PhD. So let me close, because what I really want to do right now is I want to suck up to you guys. Okay. Hope. Again, I was raised in the church. We didn't have much when I was growing up. I was blessed, I was lucky to have parents who even at that time were educated. That's the only reason why I'm where I am today, and of course by the grace of God. So when you have separate but equal, when you have black folks who are in schools that sometimes are deliberately underfunded, you can't even begin to see the ramifications. Because what that means is that you have engineers that will never become engineers. You have doctors that will never become doctors. You have architects that will never become architects. You have one of those people that may even save your life, whether you're black or white or whatever color you are, but that may never be. We don't know how much damage we do. We don't learn from history. Forget about what we say. And Lord knows I like Obama, but not even the finest speeches in the world. So if you're here tonight, it's because you believe. And I pray to God, because it's God who put, again, I'm speaking as Soji, I'm not speaking as Norfolk State. Because God must have put something in your heart. It's a gift. Love is not your money, it's not your house, it's definitely not your car. The greatest gift that you have is love. That's why you're here tonight. Love, that same word that is the most misused, the most abused, the most misunderstood word, is what brought you here. And if you continue to believe, I don't know if it's going to be in your lifetime, I don't know if it's going to be in my lifetime, but if we continue to push, maybe one day we can talk about Jim Crow and laugh about it. Thank you.
We want to continue the conversation. For any questions we have in the audience, for anybody who would like to pose questions following the presentation.
Yes, sir.
Well, you certainly affirmed something that I thought, is that some, maybe many, of the people who voted for our president are afraid that the statistics are coming, where those of us in white skin will be a minority in this country. And it's out of that fear and loss of power that things are happening.
Right.
If you want to comment on that, I will.
I gotta get your name.
Charles.
Charles. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you asked that question. You know, when what's it called? Everybody's old enough to remember what's it called? The 8 cartridge. Yeah, you know that stuff, the music thing, you know. Oh, you know it? Yeah. So when that 8 cartridge came, they say that's the end of whatever. And then we have the CD. People are not going to go to the movies anymore. And we keep changing it. We keep changing it. So you remember what I said? We don't learn from history. We do not. Let me say something. Casting again, you heard me say this before. You know what? If there were no blacks, if there were no browns in this country, if those blacks had never been shipped over here, the people who hate, who lynched, who whatever, they will find somebody to pick on. They did find somebody to pick on. They picked on the Italians. They picked on the Irish. By the way, if they picked on their wives. Not only there is no truth behind it, and please correct me if I'm wrong. We have folks from Harvard, from Columbia. Nobody has ever done that study to say, you understand that? I hear it all the time. The browning of America. I have to be careful the way I say this. I'm an immigrant.
What?
Yes, I'm an immigrant. And if you ask me, I will tell you I'm 120% against open borders. That's a stupid idea. Open borders, just open that border and let anybody who wants to come in, come in. That sounds crazy. You might think that, okay, now I'm there, I'm taking away the ladder. No, because let us face it. Some things are realistic, some things are not realistic. You know why I'm so angry at Democrats sometimes? I won't tell you what party I belong to. Let me tell you why Democrats really get on my nerves. Because they need to develop some backbone. Because sometimes, some backbone. Because sometimes they really have some good policies that are backed by common sense, and instead of just pushing those things, just stand by the corner and look. Immigration is not a bad thing. It has never been a bad thing. If immigration was a bad thing, Europe will have ceased to exist a long time ago. Period. Europe existed thousands of years before the United States did. Ain't that right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
No, because if you manage it, diversity is. Have you looked lately at anything the United States does, whether you go to the Olympics, whether you go to wherever, and you see, oh, you're struggling to pronounce my name. Let me give you any phone book. We don't use phone book anymore, but you remember when they used to do that? And see how many names you cannot pronounce? And because sometimes if when you're looking at the names, you don't even know who's white, you don't know who's black. But these are the same people that you find, on the forefront of cutting edge technology. These are the same people who made this country, because what they do is that when I come here, I don't improve only my quality of life. I improve the quality of life of every student that I touch. I have students who have become professors. I have students who are now in the foreign service. I have students who are everywhere. How do I know? Because they come back to us. And I'm one person. And I have 2 children. You don't even know what those 2 children are going to do. You don't even know what they're going to contribute to this place. I forgot to tell you this too. I'm a dreamer. I want to live, Charles, in a world where 1,000 years from now, you would not be able to figure out who's white, who's black, who's brown, because the colors would have been so mingled. And the only way you can find out is you got to go do that DNA thing. I hope I answered your question.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Take Charles's question, would go back to the three-fifths compromise.
Yes.
Was that the beginning of a loss of power? But by the northern states versus the southern?
Yeah, you know, we talked about democracy, and but that's the most stupid thing I've ever heard of. How do you count? I want to know where they did their own math. How do you count people? I mean, when we count is 1, 2, 3, 4. How did you get to that 3/5 of again? You know. Oh, by the way, this is how I'm going to answer your question. We were colonized by the British, so most of the things that I do, I'm inspired by the British. The British, you know, they have their own problems right now in the whatever. You see, they have a saying. They say the law. I'm going to change the name, but when I change the name, you know what I mean. They say the law is a donkey. That's if you're riding a donkey, you can make it go left, you can make it go right, you can make it go anywhere. Okay, do you know that the same people, of course, we know what 3/5 of whatever, you can't have your cake and eat it at the same time. Oh, okay, you want to count the blacks, you understand, because the South, you want to use them for your, you know, for voting purposes, okay? And that voting in fact, because you can only vote for the House of Representatives. Okay, then you vote for the House of Representatives, you stop there. Because now you got to choose the electors who are going to choose the senators or whatever. So they needed the South, they needed that number, you understand, to use. It doesn't even make sense. You say they're properties. You say they're not citizens. But then you want to count them. And all these things I'm telling you is law. Because the 3/5 compromise made it into what? Into law. So when we are looking at the things that people are doing today, suppression of votes, and we are surprised and we say, oh, I watched the news, like, you know, and I hear people, oh, this is unprecedented. This has never happened in America. I said, oh. The America of 3/5. We've seen all these things before. Again, like I said, it's because we don't learn from them. We've seen it before because it was for convenience. It was people sat down and, you know, they were talking to each other. They say, well, you know what? I don't care what it says. This constitution is not going to be ratified. I got to count my blacks. I don't care, but they're not citizens. And so what? And so what? Okay, now I can set for 3/5. You can 5 people to be 3. The other 2, where do you put them? I mean, it would have been funny if it was not law. It would have been funny.
The same thing now with the census. Years ago, you just told how many people was in your house. Now they want to know how many citizens in the house. And that is another way. That's what they wanted. So that's going back to that same census for the candidates at 3/5 of the vote.
You know what I think, and please do not quote me on this because I haven't done any study or research or whatever. So this is just my uneducated guess. This is just my common sense talking now. And sometimes I don't trust my common sense either. You know, I like you already, man. You know what I think about that? I think it's gonna come back I don't think it's gonna happen, number one. I don't think it's gonna happen. But if it happens, it's going to come back and bite them in the tail. And this is what I mean by that. When you make laws that cannot be enforced, you're setting yourself up for failure. When you think, how many millions of, what do you call that? They call them the name, immigrants who are not, I don't want to call them illegal immigrants, okay? But undocumented, okay? Let us be very clear. Again, I will say it clearly, I'm absolutely against open borders. Okay? Do you want to know how those undocumented workers actually came here? I'll tell you how they came here. They came here. Some people will tell you that they were looking for work. People actually were going into those places recruiting them. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, the state of Alabama passed one of the most draconian laws against undocumented. You remember that, sir? And then those people were running away to Georgia, to Texas and stuff like that. The same year, because the tomatoes, the lettuce, everything was rotten on the farm. The restaurants couldn't get anybody to wash their plates. You know who stood up first? The Chamber of Commerce. That council, the people who were in the council, I think it was at the council level, I can't remember that again, maybe, but the people who were responsible for that law, they were all voted out without exception the next election. And it didn't stop there. That council or whatever had to spend money to beg those people to come back. You know how they did that? Because now the kids that were in school, they provided them free daycare. They were giving them all kinds of whatever, and still they did not get all of them back. It is, if you make laws, you understand? Let me. Why don't we learn? Because I keep coming back to that. Why don't we learn? There are, and the census thing that you said, again, I don't think that they're going to win that. But here is the thing. The people who did it, they're doing it out of malice. Not because that there is a serious study that has found out that, oh, you know what, 80% of the problems in this country is because when we do census, we count people that are not citizens. What difference does it make?
You still need to verify your service.
Yes.
But I have another question. Because you talked about the electoral college.
Yes, ma'am.
And we know that even our founding fathers did not trust the common people. And that's why they had the electoral college. But now we're going right back with the court deciding that even that representative doesn't have to vote in line with the people. Now, is there any hope? You said, I certainly hope there is.
In fact, let me tie that, Ms. Vash. Let me tie that. So, oh, you haven't finished?
Okay, no, I'm finished.
Let me tie that to something else, and I will come back. Let me tie that to gerrymandering.
Yes.
You know why I want to tie that to gerrymandering? Because the Supreme Court is saying, we're not touching it. So, I have never for once believed, and there is empirical proof to support this, that the founding fathers ever wanted democracy. They did not design a democracy, they did not desire a democracy, they never wanted a democracy. Because if they did, the government of the people, for the people, by the people, in fact, there is ample, you know what? All these things, they saw what happened in Rome. They saw what happened in the rest of Europe, and the first thing they told themselves during that constitutional convention was that, heck no. We are not having that. Popular democracy. So I would have been even more honest had it not been that they attached that connotation popular democracy to it. Just don't call it the government of the people by the people. We just call it what it is. We won't be fighting over it today. At least somebody would say, but we told you that was what we were going to do. How can it be popular democracy when, like I said, okay, you are citizen. Let's say this room is the United States of America in 1787. Okay? I'm sorry, women, you can't vote. Well, I'm sorry, if you're black, you can't vote. Oh, sir, if you don't...
I'm sorry.
Kathleen, can I digress a little bit? So I don't have that. You know what you remind me of? This lady just passed away, and I know most of you would know her, Cookie Roberts. Yeah. Cookie Roberts passed. So I was listening to something on NPR, and they were talking about, good news that women have just been granted the right to vote. And Cookie Roberts said, no, they were not granted the right to vote. They had the right to vote, you know. Yeah, so you're right, I should know. But again, like I said, if you're a man, you're here, and I'm talking about white men, if you don't have, say, 10 horses in your stable, so now, that's right, if you don't have slaves. So right now, so I'm counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, only 5 men can vote. So now when you vote for only members of the House of Representatives because, we have 2 houses. Oh yes, we have 2 houses. But the second house, oh no, I'm sorry, you cannot, we don't trust you enough. Because they told us in no unmistakable terms that the reason why they don't allow you until that thing was changed in what, 1925 or 1927? 27th Amendment, whatever that is. But until it was changed, you understand, you couldn't even vote for your senators. So the Electoral College thing, we all know that that is a hoax. That is a hoax. Now, that is not going to change anytime soon. And I'm finished that. You know why that's not going to change anytime soon? Because now we have a new melody in America. We have a new melody in America. We like to divide ourselves. Usually it was black, white. But now it's Republican. I've been in this country long enough to know when Republicans and Democrats work together, they pass laws. We're talking about all these civil rights and stuff like that. None of that would have been possible if they didn't work together. But now we are nothing but a country of divided people. Black against white. Even within churches now, mega churches against whatever. You're talking about divisions, urban, rural. They say exactly. So now it's not going to change anytime soon because those small states. How do you conduct elections? And you have the 2 biggest states in the country. What kind of democracy is that? And presidential candidates don't even go there to campaign at all. When was the last time anybody went to New York or to California to campaign? They don't spend money there. They don't go there. They don't even go there to say, hi, hello, I'm running. Those are the 2 biggest. So that's what the Electoral College does. And again, like I said, the reason why it's not going to change anytime soon is that, unfortunately, some states have seen that, there is some benefit in this for us. And you would need a constitutional amendment to do that, and you're not going to get that anytime soon.
Talking about voting. And the idea in this rural area and the division, we have of now been scheduled to go. This was our voting place here. Now we have been scheduled to go out of our church and go right somewhere else, so that they have more of us, and we know it as the fingers on your hand. Why? So now we can't, the small person can't say.
Before I answer your question, I want to do something. And I go back to what I said at the beginning, that when we talk about race is usually an uncomfortable thing. If you have noticed since the beginning that except when I'm putting words into other people's mouths, you probably will very rarely hear me speak about us versus them. Okay? I tell my students all the time that nobody can deny that there's racism. It's not just in America, it's in Europe, it's in everywhere. But let me go back to your question. I was Chief Assistant Officer of Elections for my city, Chesapeake, for 10 years. It's a volunteer job. They pay us $175, that's it. And one thing that I have noticed, and that's why I say, that's how you know how bad it is. Folks, you don't know how bad it is. This country is divided. When you hear Trump has 35%, wait a minute, something happens. I'm coming back to your question, man, and this is the last one too, by the way. You know, when I see that poll, and I see 45% approve of President Trump's job, I don't know who those 45 are. Because what does it take? What does it have to do for you to be offended? What do you have to do? I travel a whole lot, and I can tell you that if you go anywhere in the world, if you have that blue passport, you get respect. Not anymore now. Not anymore now. I come from a part, if you go with that blue, the American passport, okay, even with my accent and stuff like that, I still got a little bit of respect. Now you go now. And I come from a part of the world where people call us third world or whatever. America is the butt of jokes. Because I love my country, I love my people. But it's stuff that we used to say before now that, oh, it can only happen in Africa. Oh, it can only happen in whatever. And these people are looking like, oh, thank God for Trump. Now we know that white people are as bad as we are too. That's the kind of joke. I mean. So when I see 45%, you know, but those things again, it's because we don't learn. We do not learn. You cannot, we can suppress votes, we can, all these things are like smoke. If a house is on fire, I don't care how much you insulate it or whatever, the smoke will come out. That smoke will come out. Thank you.